We are. Where are we? Good question. Yeah, we are. Yeah, not 50. Oh, Hanukkah came earlier this year. 59a, 3 lines and 1 word from the bottom. So we just mentioned to answer one of our questions that Rabbi Yehuda says that you can throw the you can sacrifice you can slaughter the sacrifices on the floor of the courtyard. You don't need don't need an altar. When it comes to an application of the blood, then you do. So that's what we mentioned at the end of yesterday. Now the Gemara is going to say, where did Rabbi Yehuda say this? And we're going to have basically 4 debates: Rabbi Yehuda against Rabbi Yossi about different parts of the altar. Here we go. My Rabbi Yehuda. What was Rabbi Yehuda we just mentioned? Tanya, the Price is quoting a verse about the dedication of the Beis Hamikdash. Vayomahu, Hidesh HaMelech Estoka Chatzar. The Melech, Shlomo, sanctified the inner part of the Chatzar, Asher Lifnei Beis Hashem, in the temple. And it says there, the verse continues, Ki Mizbeach HaNechoshes, the copper Mizbeach. It's not really copper. It's really gold, but it's called the copper because that's what it was in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. Asher Lifnei Hashem. Good morning, Steve. How was the gate? Jules is inviting you to park in the Kollel parking lot. So the Beis Hamikdash. So it says there at the end of the verse that it was Lifnei Hashem. Katon mehachil ola. Literally means too small to contain the ola. So meaning, it sounds like literally it means the altar itself was too small to contain all the necessary sacrifices. Therefore, he sanctified the floor of the courtyard to slaughter it there too, to avoid traffic, too much traffic. The last line of 59a. Oh. So says the Gemara, Dvarim kiksavan, Rabbi Yehuda. The words are literally like they sound, like they're written. In the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, means that he actually sanctified the floor in order to slaughter the olos and the shlamim. There were so many of them for the inauguration of the temple. Yeah. Okay. That is Rabbi Yehuda. That's really what we need. And you see, he sanctified the floor, and that's what we mentioned yesterday. Now, once we mentioned Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to go for the rest of today about Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. So the first debate is this. That was Rabbi Yehuda. Amalei Rabbi Yossi, bringing the page. The Halok Kvar Nemar, doesn't it say, so in Malachim Aleph right there, so doesn't it say earlier in Malachim Aleph, the Halok Kvar Nemar, Elef Olos Yale Shlomo Ala Mizbeach Lahu. Shlomo sacrificed 1,000 Mizbeach, 1,000 offerings on that altar. Ve'ilu Beis Olamim Hu Omer. And then when it comes to dedication of the temple in the verse in the 8th chapter of Malachim Aleph, it says Vayizbach Shlomo Zevach HaShlamim Asher Zavach LaHashem. It says there Bakar Esrim Ushnaim Elef Vitzon Meya VeEsrim Elef. So there's 22,000 plus 120,000, so 142,000 offerings were offered. That's a lot. So now when you do the cheshbon, when you do the math, when you figure out the calculations of the amount of offerings brought by Shlomo, 142,000 offerings, and the calculation of the altar, you're going to realize that Zeh Gadol Mizeh. Actually, the altar of the temple is way larger, it's much bigger than the altar of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's not smaller, it's actually much larger. So according to that, what does the verse mean? Mahu katan mehachil. what does it mean when that verse by the dedication said that the altar was too small? What do you mean it was too small? Just 142,000 sacrifices were able to be brought on it. I mean, not at the same time, but sounds like somewhat smoothly. What does it mean it's too small? So it's actually not a reference to the altar that was being dedicated at the time of the temple. It's actually a reference back to the altar in Moshe Rabbeinu's time. And basically what it's saying is that it was too small. So now that it's not here anymore, we need a bigger altar. But instead of saying that it's too small and it's invalid, instead of saying it's invalid, it'd rather say it's too small. That's more proper language. It's more proper to say it's too small than to say it's invalid. Invalid is like a direct insult, so to speak. So, Ma'u katan mehakil. So it's funny, nowadays we're going to think the opposite. If you have a Kohen midget, right? So a Kohen midget is invalid from serving in the temple. So you have two ways to inform him of this. One is you're a midget, and one is you're invalid for serving in the temple. Nowadays, I don't know, they both don't sound too good. You're a midget sounds like also, but yeah. So instead of telling him you're invalid, you tell him you're a midget, and I'm sorry, you're a midget, and that would be the yeah. So that's over So too, instead of this altar of Moshe Rabbeinu's time, instead of calling it invalid, it says it's too small. We needed a bigger one. Yeah. Okay. Fine. So Rabbi Yehuda once again learns the verse that actually the altar itself was too small in the time of the temple. Therefore, they sanctified the floor of the courtyard. Rabbi Yossi learns that the altar was actually much bigger than Moshe Rabbeinu's, and therefore they didn't eat up. And therefore they could sacrifice them all on the altar. So now, says the Gemara of Rabbi Yehuda Shapir, Kama Rabbi Yossi. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi had a very good argument. They just served 140,000 sacrifices, and it was bigger than the altar of Moshe Rabbeinu. What pushed Rabbi Yehuda to learn the verse that it was a very small altar in the time of Shlomo? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda letame. Rabbi Yehuda went according to his reasoning in terms of how large was the altar in the time of Moshe. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? The Amar Mizbeach Sh'asa Moshe Gadol Haya. Actually, the altar in Moshe Rabbeinu's time was actually quite large. The Tanya Chamish Amos Orech Chamish B'Chamish Amos Roche. So the verse in Shmos says, and it was 5 amas by 5 amas, 5 amas tall by 5 amas wide. Yeah, and then it says, okay, so that's Dvarim Kiksavan Divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi reads the pasuk literally 5 amos wide and 5 amos tall. That's it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, we have Gzeira Shava. Nemer kan Ravua. Ravua means it's squared out. We're going to now talk about it was 5 amos or it was square amos. So Rabbi Yehuda says Ravua. It says that it was squared over there by the width was Ravua. Right? No, sorry. Ravua yem is back. It was Ravua. It was squared. What does that mean? Namarkan Ravua. That's a better word than squared. Ravua means Namarkan Ravua v'Namar lahaldan, and it says all the way in Yecheskel. It says the word Ravua too, and there it's talking about the altar, and it says that it was 12 amos lengthwise, 12 amos widthwise. It says in Yecheskel in the 43rd chapter, Ravua. So it says it's Ravua there too. Okay. So what does that teach you? Just like over there by the altar mentioned in Yecheskel, when it says Ravua, it's coming to teach you that you measure the altar from the middle, not from the outside looking. From the outside, you see this table and you say, okay, it's going to be whatever it is, 4 feet by, I don't know, by 1 foot. But you take those measurements from the middle of the table, and now you divide it up into a quadrant. Each one's going to be that measurement. So just like over there, so you would do I guess it's 12 by 12 from the middle. So it's going to be 24 by 24 on the sides, right? Right? Yeah, is that what it says? Yeah, okay. So, right, that's big, right? 20 by, each omelet is about 1.5 foot. So 24 is going to be 36, 40, yeah, to 40 almost. So, what is that? So this was the inner altar in Yecheskel. I don't remember right now. Can't think that fast. It's referring to the altar of the temple, the outer altar, right?
He uses this Gezerah Shabbat, the height of the outer altar. He uses the height of the outer altar.
Of Moshe's time. Well, let's see. Okay, let's see. So Nemarkan Rabu, Nemarkan Rabu, Afkan Mem. So Iso Hayamoded. So here also, okay. So Rabbi Yehuda says, when the Torah says 5 by 5, it's telling you to measure from the inside, which means that if it's 5 by 5 in the inside, it's going to be 10 by 10. So it's going to be 10 lengthwise, widthwise, and 10 heightwise. So Rabbi Yehuda says, that's pretty big. That's a big altar. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's 5 by 5. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's really 10 by 10. Now, v'hasam minalan, how do you know in Yecheskel that you do that? Just quotes the verse. The ha'ariel here means the place where you put the pyre for the altar. Shteimasrei amal lekol ruach, in each direction. Oh, eino el yud beis al yud beis. Maybe it's really 12 by 12 total, and not 12 by 12 in quadrants, and therefore 24 by 24 total. Says the Gemara, no. Kishuhu Omer, when it says in Yecheskel el arba'as riva'ah, to the 4 squares, the 4 squared out areas, milamed shema emta humoda. You see that talking about the middle, because I'm a 4 squared out areas. So if you're in the middle, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So from there you see that you measure from the middle, and therefore by the altar, by Moshe Rabbeinu's time, it's also going to be measured from the middle. So the 5 by 5 is really 10 by 10, right? Okay. So another plug for the oral tour. Yeah. So I mean, the Gemara is full of it. Yeah. I always think whenever someone has a question on the written Torah, you just never learn the Daf Gemara. It's like the whole thing proves you how the psukim are hard to understand at face value after all derivations. Okay. So okay, so fine. That is Rabbi Yehuda. So that's where Rabbi Yehuda learned that the altar of Moshe was actually quite large. Quite large. And yeah, okay. So once again, according to Rabbi Yossi, the altar was actually much bigger because Moshe's was too small. Rabbi Yehuda defends himself by saying, no, Moshe's was actually very big. And therefore the altar of the temple was actually smaller, which you needed to sanctify the ritzpah, the floor of the courtyard. Fine. Now, next difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, what does he do with the Gezerah Shavah? So Rabbi Yehuda just learned to teach you to measure from the inside, and the altar is actually much bigger than we thought. It was 10 by 10. Rabbi Yossi, ki gamer Gezerah Shavah, big gova hu de gamir. Rabbi Yossi learns out the Gezerah Shavah to teach you the height of the tabernacle. Where do we see that? In Tanya, it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, the shalosh amos kol maso. 3 amos is its height. Tvarim kiksavan divrei Rabbi Yehuda. 3 amos its height. That is according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer, no. Namar kan ravua. It says you're squared out, and it says by Yecheskel, v'namar lahalan ravua malahalan gova pishnayim ke'arko. Just like by Yecheskel, the height is twice its length. Afkan pishnayim ke'arko. So to here, the height is going to be twice its length, which means that according to Rabbi Yossi, that the altar of the altar is only 5 amos its height's going to be twice its length, because the Gzeir Shava teaches me that from Yecheskel, Ravua, which means that its height is going to be 10 amos in Moshe Rabbeinu's time. According to Rabbi Yossi, you read the length and the width literally 5 by 5. The Gzeir Shava is used to teach you that the height is double its length. Why?
You said it was
10 amos.
10 amos.
Meaning the actual altar is 10 amos.
Yeah.
But they can walk up the ramp, whatever. They can walk up to the, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's tall. It's pretty tall, yeah. So, you did say that, okay? We know the first thing Jules is going to do when he gets to that altar. Yeah. Do the Macarena, no. Okay. So, now that's an image to laugh. No. So, okay. So, Amar Le, don't tell Joan. So, Amar Le Rabbi Yehuda. So, according to Amar Le Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, is that one second? So, says Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to get into a problem here because basically the setup's going to be like this. You want to tell me the height was so tall that you need tall, that's very tall. What's going to be the problem is that you're going to have a curtain around the tabernacle in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's going to be a curtain all around. Now, the curtain was only so high. So if you're going to have a Kohen on the tabernacle, you're going to be able to see him from the outside. And that, the Gemara says, is a violation of tznius, of modesty. Interesting. Okay. So, Amalei Rabbi Yehuda, Efsher Kohen Omer al Gabi, Efsher Kohen Omer al Gabi Mizbeah, the avoda biyado, and he's doing the avoda, the kol ha'am roenoso, and the whole nation is watching him. And the whole nation sees him mibachutz. Not tznius, that's not modest. It's interesting. I'm wondering, like, let's look it up. I'm not saying this is why, but right, the Kohanim, when they bless, right, they're fully covered. They cover their hands are out. They cover their head. I don't know. Never mind. So, Amar Rabbi Yossi Mahalo Karnamar. So that's what. Okay, so Rabbi Yossi says. 1 second. Sorry, that was. I lost my husband. 1 second. Yeah, that was Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda told them they're going to see him. Rabbi Yossi, not true. The Halo Kvar Nemar Ves Kalei Chatzer Ves Masach Shara Chatzer Asher Alam Mishkan Alam Mizbeah. The curtains of the inner area are going to be similar to the curtains of the outer area. Sorry, we're comparing the curtains to the altar. Ma Mishkan Eser Amos, just like the tabernacle is 10 amos high. Af Mizbeach Eser Amos, so to the altar is going to be 10 amos. The Omer Kilayim Chamesh Esrei Amos. Next page. And the curtain, the Kilayim, are going to be 15 amos. 15 amos El Ha Kosef. 15 amos to the gate, to the shoulder. Okay. So therefore, if it's 15 amos, so therefore you have that leeway, meaning he's going to tell you back, what do you mean? The whole thing was 10 amos high, but the curtain was 15 amos from the top, from the shoulder, meaning from the top of the altar. So that's 5 amos. So now that's a regular person, I don't know, 5.5, 6 feet tall. So that's only going to be 3 amos, whatever it is. 4 amos. 4 amos. So this is 5 amos. Plus your hands are lower down doing the avoda. Your hands are down, but so fine. So umat Talmud lomar. What does it mean? Chamesh amos misvas mizbech ulamala. Umat Talmud lomar v'shalosh amos komaso misvas. Sorry. Umat Talmud lomar chamesh amos. What does it mean? It says in the verse that the height's going to be 5 amos. What does that mean? It means misfas mizbeach. It means from the edge of the altar, it's going to be up 5 amos. Ulamala. Umat hamalomar b'shalosh amos komaso. Its height is 3 amos. According to Rabbi Yossi, it's 10. What does that mean? 3 amos? It means misfas sovev v'lamala. So I'm sure there's a picture there, but basically the sovev is a part that goes around. I think it's a red string, but the string that goes around the altar. So that's presumably about 5, 6 amos up. So from the edge of that up, it's going to be 3 amos. So to the top of the altar. So meaning this thing is the string around is 6 amos, 3 amos up will get to the top of the altar. That's 9 amos. Then the horns on top is going to be the 10th amos. So that's all it means. It means 3 amos, not from the top of the altar. It means 3 amos from the sfas hasoveh from the edge of this string going around and up. That's all Rabbi Yossi. Okay. The Rabbi Yehuda Gamir Gzeir Shava Berachahu the Gamir. Yeah, and Rabbi Yehuda, this is what we already mentioned, that he learns the Gzeir Shava to teach you Berachahu the Gamir. Right, he learns that the way you measure is from the middle, just repeating itself from before. Rabbi Yossi learns out the height. Rabbi Yehuda learns out how you measure from the middle, and therefore it's going to be much bigger than we thought. Fine. Well, the Rabbi Yehuda, now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who does not have the Gzeir Shava available to teach you its height, so then literally its height was, it's only 3 amos tall. The altar is only 3 amos tall. And the curtains are only 5 amos tall. If you read it literally, Rabbi Yehuda read it 5 amos above the shoulder, 3 amos above the edge. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, who reads it literally, the whole curtain is 5 amos. The altar is 3 amos. And Rashi points out the Kohen himself is 3 amos. Average height. Not so tall, 4.5 feet. For Moshe Feinstein was like a little taller than that. He was considered very short. Yeah. It's gone up?
Oh, yeah.
Is there hope for me still, or I'm done growing? Unclear. I'm a genius, okay? It's wrong. Okay. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who reads it literally, what do you have? 3 amos is the tabernacle. Then you have 5 amos is the curtain. The guy himself is 3 amos. So he's 6 amos. He's 1 amma above the curtain, presumably. Average Kohen. So how come it's Chazi Kohen? You can see the Kohen, it's not Tznius. Says the Gemara, no. Mehi the Kohen mischazi, avoda de biyolo mischazi. It's not a violation of modesty if you could see the Kohen, but you can't see what he's doing. Because even though his head maybe or the top of his body is an amma above the curtain, but his hands are still lower down. So you're not going to be able to see what he's doing. Okay. Now, Bish, the mother of Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it makes sense that it says by the inauguration of the temple, it says Kidesh. It says, what is it? Kidesh, 1 second. Yeah. Kidesh HaMelech as Tocha Chatzer. I was wondering this, that the king sanctified the inner part of the temple, meaning the floor. That's how the whole thing got started. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that's read literally. He sanctified the floor because the tabernacle was too small, and you had to bring all the sacrifices. Ela the Rabbi Yossi, my Kiddush. What does Kiddush mean? It doesn't mean the floor was sanctified. It means Lahamid b'mizbeach. You needed to sanctify in order to put the mizbeach there. The mizbeach can't be put in a non-holy place. Okay. So now, Bishlam the Rabbi Yossi, according to Rabbi Yossi, it's very good. The verse says, Katan. The verse says that the mizbeach was Katan mehachel esa'ol ela'olah. According to Rabbi Yossi, it says Katan, and that's good. I was like, why is that good? Yeah, I mean, according to Rabbi Yossi, that Shlomo was very big and Moshe's was small. And that's referring to Moshe's altar. When the verse talks about the altar, it's not referring to the one being sanctified, it's referring to the one of Moshe's time. It was too small. That's Rabbi Yossi, that's good. Ela Rabbi Yehuda, Mai Katan, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what does it mean it was small? So I don't. Okay, I guess something grammatically bothersome in according to Rabbi Yehuda, it makes perfect sense. The altar itself was too small. They had to sanctify the floor of the courtyard to bring sacrifices on it. Yeah, so it's asking, I guess, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it says the word katan correspond right next to the Mizbeach HaNechoshes, the copper altar. Now, the Mizbeach HaNechoshes, okay, this is the problem. The verse by Shlomo talks about the Mizbeach HaNechoshes, the copper altar. There was no copper altar in the Shlomo's time. That was in Moshe Rabbeinu's time. So according to Rabbi Yossi, it made a lot of sense because Shlomo was big and Moshe was small. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that says that Shlomo was small and Moshe was big. So why does it say small, that the altar was small? By Moshe Rabbeinu's altar, it wasn't small. It was big. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, what's the reference that Moshe Rabbeinu's altar was small? What does that mean? Hachi Kamer, this is what it means to say. Mizbeach avanim she'osa Shlomo tachas mizbeach hanechoshes tachas mizbeach hanechoshes katan havei. It just means to say, it's just a comparison, that the altar of stones that Shlomo built in place of the copper altar, that was small. So we are referencing the altar of Shlomo, comparing it to the altar of Moshe Rabbeinu, saying that the altar that Shlomo built in place of the copper altar, that was small. So the word small is not defining for you the copper altar, as the verse seems to indicate, because according to him, it was not small. It was 10 by 10. It was big. What it means to say is the altar that Shlomo built was small. It was the altar that was in place of the copper altar of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's all it means. Fine. Oh, good. Right. Yeah, good. That's coming from the next line. Good. Meaning the inner altar that Shlomo built. Yeah, good. Because I was confused by that, and now it's going to make sense. Very good. That's the next line. The Ma'i Pligi, what's the machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi? So at the end of the day, the machlokas is like this. Mar savar danin chutz mi chutz, the ein danin chutz mi pnim. So one opinion holds that what do you learn out from what to what? So Rabbi Yossi learns Gzeira Shava, that it is squared from the inner altar, and he learns that to the outer altar by the temple. Inner altar to outer temple, that's Rabbi Yossi, just like the inner altar, by Moshe. The opposite. Just like the inner altar by Yecheskel was measured from the inside, so too Moshe Rabbeinu's outer altar will be measured from the inside as well. That's called danin chutz mi chutz. The ein danin chutz mi pnim, and he doesn't learn out the inner altar to the inner altar, or the outer altar to the inner altar. Umar saver danin kli mi kli, the ein danin kli mi binyan. So at the end of the day, the altar in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, it's considered a vessel because it's movable. They would move the tabernacle from place to place. So it's movable like a vessel, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're done in kli mi, the ain done in kli mi binyan, that you learn out the keep the calculation from before. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you learn out the vessel to a vessel, meaning reviews outside.
Yeah, also derive the law of something that is outside, essentially from the law of something that is outside. In other words, you can't compare inside and outside.
Okay, and then Rabbi Yossi, who compares the height. Okay, and Rabbi Yossi.
Rabbi Yossi would derive the law of a vessel from the law of another vessel. I would do not derive the law of a vessel from the law of the scripture. So he's basically, I think what he's saying is you've got a kli. So you learn a kli from a kli.
Okay.
Doesn't matter where the other kli.
So okay, but according to Rabbi Yossi, the Gzeira Shava was used to teach you the height. The height, right? The height. Why is the height a vessel from a vessel?
And who chose to record the dimension?
I mean, Rabbi Yossi learns out from the Mizbech itself. Yeah, the altar, that's why, because the altar itself is considered a vessel. So Rabbi Yossi learns out the vessel from the vessel. He learns out the copper Mizbech to the golden Mizbech. And he doesn't learn out to a structure. As opposed to Rabbi Yehuda, he learns out the structure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, hold on somewhere. Okay, fine. We're gonna continue. So Amar Rava says, Moder Rabbi Yehuda bedamim. So this idea that Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the actual application of the blood has to be on a altar. You know, the sacrifices could be, if the courtyard is sanctified, could be on the courtyard, but the altar itself the blood application has to be on the altar itself. Titania. So now this we had a little bit earlier. Rabbi Yehuda Omer by Pesach time. Kos echad haya memala midama tarovis. So they would have a shofar agabe mizbeach. They would take up on Pesach all those sacrifices, a cup from the ground, meaning from the floor, which is full of blood, and they would go and they would throw it onto the altar because that blood was mixed with different sacrifices, and therefore, for sure, someone who might have spilled or whatever, he'll be atoned for. If one guy spilled his blood, you'll now put it, you'll scoop something up. It probably has some of his blood in there, and you will put it onto the altar. Now, these if the entire altar, the floor is sanctified, so why are you taking the blood and applying it onto the altar? It's avile mitzvah. On the ground itself is a place where you can sacrifice sacrifices. On the ground of the courtyard. So it's already on the ground. It was done already. What do you need to take it and apply it onto the altar? So, yeah. So now, the Dilma, maybe you'll say, there's a special requirement that you need a person to apply it. It can't just be on the floor on its own work. You have to put in your 2 cents and actually apply it. So then, so pick up a cup from the ground and just pour it back on the ground. You pour it onto a holy area, you should be good to go. The Dilma Mishom, the Ba'inan mitzvah min ha-mufchar. Maybe because the reason is that the choicest way to do the mitzvah is to apply it onto the altar. That's even though you could do it on the ground. You could do it on the ground. You could pick up part on the ground because according to Rabbi Yehuda, the whole area is holy. But the choicest way to do it, the mitzvah and the best way to do the mitzvah is to apply it onto the altar. Okay.
But if you take this to its logical conclusion, you don't need to say. You take the korban onto the Mizbeach. You don't need to sprinkle the blood on the Mizbeach. Why do you need the Mizbeach?
The real answer is the Torah says you have to build it the same way it was built in the desert. Period. Now, according to this, it's because the primary way to do it is to do it on the altar. Mitzvah and amavchar. Yeah, I think he's in the best way possible. Yeah, but according to Yehuda, it comes out interesting. So less of a primary, yeah. Next. Okay. So, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Mizbeach shenifkam ein ochlin begino shiare mincha. An altar that was damaged, you don't eat on it the leftover of the mincha, right? Some of the flour offering got burnt, and some of the flour offering you eat. So you don't do that if the altar is at all damaged. Shenamar, as it says, Zahum matzos. Yeah, V'achlu matzos says in Vayikra. V'achlu matzos. Eitz lam is bad next to the altar. You can eat it anywhere in the courtyard. You have to eat it right next to the mizbeach. What it means is ela bizmanshu shalom, below bizmanshu chas. What it means is next to the altar means when the altar is in its complete form, then you can eat the mincha, but not when it's damaged. Ashkan shar mincha and that's only good by the mincha offering. What about the rest of the sanctified offerings? You cannot eat them if the mizbeach is damaged. It says there, so it says in that verse, which we're learning out, teaches you that the altar has to be complete. That even the holy sacrifices, the very holy sacrifices, must be eaten only when the altar is in its complete form. Now, this is interesting. What do you need an altar for? Well, maybe you could sacrifice, but can you eat things? Well, that's what we got into this whole thing. Yeah, that's what that depends on. Is it fit and then not fit, or okay, that's a separate. Yeah. If there's no altar there at all and it was never fit, I don't know. It's interesting. How does this play in with Rabbi Yehuda? There's a special requirement here to eat them when the altar is whole. What if there's no altar? We had it earlier. Okay, I don't remember. So kosher and kalamina. Okay, that's what about kosher and kalam. The less sanctified sacrifices, the less holy sanctified sacrifices, like the shlamim. Amar Abai asim midrash Rabbi Yossi. It comes from an exposition of Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer shlosha dvarim mishum shlosha zekenim. I learned three things from three elders. V'zeh echem, and this is one of them. Rabbi Shmuel. V'zu achas Rabbi Shmuel. I mean, this is one of them. One of the elders was Rabbi Shmuel, and he said that. What did he say? Let's see. Rabbi Shmuel Omer Yachol Yala Adam Meiser Sheni L'Yerushalayim V'Yochanu B'Zman. Maybe you'll think you could take Meiser Sheni, the ones that you bring on year 1, 2, 4, and 5. You have to bring it to Yerushalayim. Maybe you can bring it nowadays to Yerushalayim and eat it. Okay, why would you say that? V'dinu, that's logical. Why? Bechor Ta'on Havalos Makom. A bechor, the firstborn animal, needs a place to bring it. Umeiser Ta'on Havalos, and Meiser needs a place to be brought to Yerushalayim. Ma bechor, has to be brought to be given to the Kohen. Ma bechor einu ela b'fnei habayis. So a bechor is only when you had a temple, then you have to give it to the Kohen. Af meiser einu ela b'fnei habayis. Maybe meiser also is only when you had a temple. Ma bechor shkein tal matan damim ve'emurim. A bechor you have to apply the blood and the sacrificial parts. The gabe mizbeach. So maybe it shouldn't apply. But bikurim yochichu. But bikurim, bringing the first fruits, should prove to you not that way. Why? So because bikurim don't have the applications and still are not brought nowadays, and they still need a temple, even though they don't need a application of blood because you're bringing the first fruits, but they still need a bias. It says with name is back, you have to bring it to the altar. So mala bikurim came to unin hanach. Okay, but bikurim need to have a placement. You have to go bring them over there. And then it compares that to Meiser. Makish Meiser lebechor. Ma bechor eino ela b'fnei habayis. Af Meiser eino ela b'fnei habayis. So we compare a bechor to Meiser. Just like a bechor is only by when you have a temple, so too Meiser is only when you have a temple. I'll have to continue this tomorrow. Yeah. What time is down? 45, right?